Hi, my name's Josh, and today I'll be taking you through all the audio work that I did on the RABe 523. Today we're going to start off at the early stages of audio with some samples from our survey. And the first thing, I suppose, is how we're going to clean up a sound, essentially, from something that's quite noisy to something that's clean and usable for the game. So to begin with, we have this sample over here, which initially looks something like this. And we want to extract these little lines here, which if we were to imagine what a sound wave looks like normally, it's something like this, kind of what we're used to seeing nowadays. But this is a spectrogram. So from the lowest parts here, which I'll just highlight with that one. So from the lowest parts here, that's all your bass, and all the way up here is all your high end, and then all of your middle frequencies are in this section here. Basically, we want to get rid of all of this noise below here and in between these different lines, which are the harmonics of the sound, which are the characteristics which we need to keep. So let's have a quick listen to what the sound is like before we add effects and change things. So lots of background noise there and clunks and bumps. And as we carry on, so we've got to kind of pick out these little sections, and through the years of using this tool, you kind of learn how and where to look for these things. So for example, this section here, you can see there's a bump because there's a big white line here. And as you can tell, there's a little bit of something here in the low end, and then another big clunk over here, which I think is also part of the door. We start off with silencing everything around those different parts of the frequencies. So that was me selecting them individually, and kind of like in Photoshop or Paint, how some people can invert. We just invert the selection, and then we got rid of those different parts. So now it starts to sound something like this. So still not quite there, and you've got this weird tinny sort of effect to it. But now we use something called denoise or spectral denoise in this example. And what this does is it analyzes a quiet part of the sound. So for example, if we were to select this bit over here just before the beep and right click, we can then learn spectral denoise. And then that registers and learns that frequency spectrum and pattern. When that plays and renders over this section, it spots the difference between the two and keeps what you want and gets rid of the other stuff. So a very clever tool. And after using that, we get something that looks like and sounds like this. So another step closer, it's sounding much more usable. So then after a whole bunch of other stages, which you can see in this history tab, we use things like spectral repairs, things like normalizing, which we've turned the volume up, silencing, pasting and replacing different parts. We eventually get to the end, which is a usable thing we can now put into the game. So we now have this final sort of loop, if you will, or a one shot, which can also be fired once, which will be the final project. And then from here, I will then take it into my digital audio workstation, which is called Reaper, and we'll start doing some of the very final touches on this sound. Here I do a lot of audio editing and preparing for final preparation for samples that are going to go into the game. The example in RX9, which is the door warning loop, I wanted to kind of show what happens when you first take it in and kind of what the sample looks like when you're finished. So to begin with, we had this original sample, which sounds like this. And straight away you can see there's some inconsistencies within the sound. For example, it's in stereo and we want it into mono instead. This is because we want to place the sound in a space, in a 3D space, and with it being in stereo, that might mess up with the actual spatialization within Unreal Engine. So the first thing I did straight away was turn it into mono. And you can see over here that changes how it looks straight away. And you can hear now there's a bit of difference, especially between these first three and the following three. You can see how much louder this sound is compared to the other three. And straight away I wanted to fix this. Within Reaper, there's a ton of free instruments and samples and VST plugins that you can use. And so for this one, I used Recomp, which is a very simple compressor. It doesn't look very nice or very clean, but it does the job fantastically. This was a very harsh compression that I decided to use on here because I really wanted to get everything at a balanced level. And so you can see as I play this will really pull down the gain over here. So this is the gain reduction. Over on the left hand side is a threshold, and as a sound, which is this green bar, passes this threshold, it will then pull that sound down by a certain ratio to match the threshold level. So I'll play a little bit of that now for you. So you can see, especially in the last two, it shoots right above this threshold. And that's where a lot of the gain reduction is happening. So by using this probably over compressed settings, we've created something that's a bit more cohesive between the whole loop. So now we have a sample that sounds pretty clear. With this sample, it's obviously very, very crunchy in the top end because of the compression itself is squeezing that sound together. It almost mimics the way you would hear it in real life if it was loud and you were standing right next to the door, which is the aim for the sound to begin with. We want to record the loudest sound. So then when we use attenuation and all these other tricks that we use, it kind of goes from loudest to quietest the further you walk away, rather than starting with a sample that's quiet and having to use too much compression or processing to reach that sound. Now let's have a look at what the same process looks like for a loop in game, rather than a sound that plays only once, like a door beep. This audio loop is taken from the inside of the train, and it's sort of like a running sound. It's an ambient sound. In fact, I'll play a little bit of it for you now so you can get an idea of what this is. Preview that. So as you can hear, it's quite a good bassy tone that we've got from this sample, and there's a lot going on here. There's a lot of movement you can hear. There's a lot of these high-end squeaks and bits of the actual train moving, and as good as they are, unfortunately they just don't work when it comes to creating a loop. We want something that's kind of, again, it's quite something that's cohesive, and when it comes to looping, it doesn't have anything that kind of notifies that it is a loop. So nothing that's too obvious, essentially. So the way that we've gone around to fix up this sound, so this instant process, we use something called attenuate. And what this essentially does is by selecting an area, it listens to the area around this sound and almost smudges that section together. Kind of like how you would, again, go back to like Photoshop and using this as a similar tool. It's masking different sounds in different frequency ranges. In my history, if I skip forward a bit, you can see how all of a sudden those bits have gone now and we have a working loop. So if we were to play this sample back, So the loop would start, say, roughly around here and end here. So you've got this space in the middle for it to have all these different bits happening. And it's long enough that it isn't too laborious and too annoying. And it's not too short that it's going to cause any sort of weird problems in the engine. To create this sort of easily accessible loop, we are going to jump into a quick example elsewhere. For anybody that does want to get into audio, this is a great little tool, a little trick for generating loops. And to begin with, we start by selecting our start location, which we'll pick around here. Sometimes people like to go a specific amount of time, which you can change here in the view, time format, and pick time. So we could say we'll have 1.2 seconds of the start time, and we'll hit M to make a marker, and then we'll shift this over towards the end and create another region, and then we'll create a final region which will make sense in a second. So now what we're going to do is label these. So we have start, and we'll call this middle, and end. We're going to switch back to samples so we can see the numbers here a little bit better. And what we do is in the preferences, we set our selection feathering all the way up to 100 milliseconds, which is a second. What this does is anywhere that I select, it selects a additional second around that for a fade in and out of that selection. And this will make sense again in a second. The reason why that is important is we're going to essentially copy this section over here, just literally Command or Control C, and we're going to go new from clipboard. And this is essentially taking that bit and put it in its own separate project. We are then going to jump back to the engine loop. And from here, we're then going to go to the end. We're going to copy the end. We're going to jump back to the start. And then we're going to use this paste special and this mix option, which essentially takes the end sample, puts it on top of the start sample and mixes them together so it has a fade in and out, which is where you get that 1 second fade in from the settings. So now you'll hear it actually gets louder in the middle and then quieter again when I play that back. So you should hear like a drop off. So you can hear that there. And then to finish this up, we then take the sample that we'd got earlier and we do the reverse. So we select the end and we shift and V to paste special. Then to finish off, we take the start time and copy that over the middle, the start of the end, paste that over the end of the middle, and that effectively creates this loopable section we can drag in the middle, and we have a seamless sample ready to go in the game. A bit confusing. It confused me at first, but essentially this is how to get a sample perfect loop. And if we play that back now, so then we've got that loop there, and we can go back and make a marker or a region, and we can actually just call this loop straight away, so then we know what we're working with and get rid of the other stuff. And there we go, that's the loop made, which will then go into Reaper and be processed again. So a bit of a long-winded one. Hopefully it makes a bit of sense. That's been a brief showcase of what I get up to and how I process sounds for Rivet. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you please like, subscribe, and follow for more content that's coming soon. Thanks, bye bye.